Thanks, Ron. Team, I'm Kelly Parker. I'm coming to you from stormy Orlando, Florida today. And like Ron said, I'm going to talk to you about Fivetran and what we do. Sri, I want to really thank you for setting me up for this conversation. One of the things that you shared as you were getting started is that one of the keys for AI and ML is getting the right data in place and having good data in place. And that is a major problem for organizations. So we're going to talk about some of those problems, why data is so difficult to get into place. We're going to talk about where you might be on your data maturity curve. Then I'm going to talk to you about Fivetran and our singular focus on making, like we say, data access as simple and reliable as electricity. I promise you that is going to be one of only two metaphors that I'm going to use today. So let me move on. Here we go. So first, big problem that every organization runs into is data, because data access is hard and your business needs data in order to thrive. So a few facts that a survey found in February 2021. First of all, is that key data is not yet usable for decision making. Let me repeat that because I think this is important. Key data, not all data, but key data is not available, meaning that there's data that the business does not have access to, that it needs, that is the lifeblood of the organization that they can't get to for analytics. The next problem is that data engineers, if you're a data engineer, you know this, you are busy. You're busy night and day. The things you're busy on are a lot of times not really of high value because you're doing things like fixing things that have been done in the past. You're talking to analysts and understanding what they do and how they do it, the problems that they're trying to solve, and they don't have the data or the information yet to give you good information for writing the scripts and the things that you're working on. So your job becomes even more difficult. And then furthermore, your project list is already too long. So not only does it take too much time to develop and deliver and to maintain what you've done, but your list is too long and it can sometimes be weeks or even months before you can get to new requests. The other thing that we hear constantly, and our customers tell us this all the time, is that data pipelines are constantly breaking. Every month, they're running into major disruptions in their analytics programs because they don't have access to the data. Whatever happened, either in source or destination, something in the middle, they don't have access to it when they need it. And there's time that's taken, there's expense that goes into getting it back there. And then finally, and this is shocking, 59% of organizations share that they've had to delay decisions or they missed opportunities because they didn't have the data available because the data pipelines were broken. This is your students, your customers. These are lost opportunities to profit. These are lost opportunities to serve your patients, to make them comfortable, to serve their health. There are a lot of lost opportunities because data wasn't available. So I think we can all agree that these are problems. The good news is almost all of you, if you're talking to us, you're talking to Microsoft, you're talking to AWS, you are on a journey to get better, to provide that data and to have a mature data process to make that data available. And you might be in a couple of places with this. If you're not on the journey, you're what we call inactive. You're making gut reactions. You're looking at you don't have data that you can react to. You're just making decisions. We all do that in our day-to-day lives, but that's not the way that we want to run a business. You might be reactive. So you're working within a particular application. You're looking back at the last quarter, the last month. You're looking at data and making hypotheses about what might happen in the future, but it's on past data. You might be proactive. You might be starting to bring some of this data together and work on some of those critical applications and bringing it into a data warehouse or in a data lake, starting to bring that data together so that you can start doing some proactive looks at that data. You might be starting on a data governance program where you're starting to understand where that data is, how the data is used, who's using that data, but you may be in that infancy. And then if you're at the peak, you're an innovative data organization where you have data that's not siloed. You have the data when a user needs it. You have the ability to make the data better. You have a great governance process where you're adhering to the role-based access controls, where you understand where the data is and how it should be used, who's using it, what it's being used for. You have a great data governance practice in place as well. So finally, before I talk about Fivetran, I think I want to use my last metaphor. I promised you two, right? And Clive Humby once said that data is the new oil. Businesses require it to run. There's no doubt about it. There isn't a business out there, and a lot of organizations are now built solely on data and run on that data alone. Data in itself is very valuable. Just the raw product of data is valuable, and you have foreign agents, you have people within your business, you have all kinds of organizations outside of your business who are trying to get to that data and partner with you, steal it, whatever it may be. It's valuable just as it is, but refining it and making it very good quality and getting it available to the person who needs it when they need it makes that data even more valuable. That's my metaphor too. So let's talk about Fivetran and how we help you solve some of these problems of the data engineers not having enough time, your people not having the data when they need it, the data just not being available, the data pipelines breaking. I want to talk to you about how Fivetran really enables your organization to solve some of those big problems in data. So first of all, Fivetran has a singular focus, and that's making your data as simple and reliable as electricity. And what we mean by that is if you walk over to the wall right now and you hit the switch, your data, your lights are likely going to come on. This is maybe a bad example because you're in California, and I know with the heat there's some rolling brownouts and things, but likely you walk over and you hit that switch. Well, from an analytics perspective, you need that same kind of switch to get access to data that's locked away in applications, that is in your heartbeat databases, that is in files and other sources that are difficult to get to and difficult to put good practices around. You need to get all of that into one place, and you need to be able to do something with it. You have high volume data that is difficult to manage and maintain because of the throughput with which it's changing. You need access to that data and get that change data as it's being changed outside of those silos and into these places where the data could be. You have data products that are powered outside of your organization. So you may be taking data from some of your partners and bringing it in, and you need ways that are simple and reliable, that don't require you to do a lot of coding, and you and your partner to manage that code together. You need ways of bringing that data in that's not file-based, where those files change routinely, and it's very difficult to manage bringing that data in. So these are all data problems that Fivetran helps solve. So let me talk about how we help solve it. Fivetran is a cloud-based, fully managed ELT solution. From a Fivetran perspective, we look at it very simply. You need to connect to your sources, connect to your destinations, authenticate on both sides. Fivetran does the rest. We identify the data that's changed and bring that data out of those applications and databases. We identify based on that changed data, what's changed in the database or in your data warehouse or data lake. We move the data over there. We manage the infrastructure in between. We do this all on the cloud so that you don't take on additional technical debt or additional internal infrastructure to move that data, but to really manage that data where the data is continually living in the cloud. So let's talk about how we do this more specifically from an ELT perspective. So first, extract. The first component of this is getting access to that data wherever it may be. Fivetran brings to the table hundreds of pre-built, fully managed connectors. When we say pre-built, we understand what it takes to connect to that database and the structure of the database and any of the authentication mechanisms. We understand the APIs. So if you're connecting to a Salesforce or a Workday, they have an open API. You can get to that data, but you have to authenticate into it, and you have to manage that API when things change. Fivetran takes on that burden for you. We have out-of-the-box deployability where you don't need to do any coding. There isn't a lot of configuration or changes that you have to do in that configuration to access the source data. It's really about putting in credentials, authenticating, verifying that you have access, identifying how often you want to move the data. Done. That's Fivetran. It's completely no code. So whether it's on the extract or on the load component. It's all UI based and very simple. So as you're moving away from those data engineers who are already too busy, you can put this in the hands of an analyst. You can put this in the hands of really any kind of administrator who has access to their data, who's trying to move it into a particular place with the no code. And I say not low code, not a UI based code environment, literally no code. You give your users the ability to unsilo their data themselves. And then we work from a data perspective at really any latency. Whether the data needs to be identified based on the change in the second, whether we are pulling that data every 5 minutes, every hour, every 24 hours, we can work on the latency that is required based on that analyst, based on that project, and pull that data and only have the uptime of the environment and the usage of the environment based on when we need to move that data. We talk about connectors and the ability to connect to just about anywhere. Fivetran has literally hundreds of connectors to any of your common applications, to any of your common databases, to some of your biggest databases, the SQL servers, the SAPs, the Oracles, even the DB2s. We can get data out of any of those sources for you. And if we don't have a connector yet, we have a services framework so that you can create your own connector and manage that through Fivetran. And we have the ability to create more connectors. We're constantly working on that long tail of connectors to add more and more API sources to the platform so that you don't have to create those yourself. You can have a fully managed process to get at any of that source data.
Hey, Kelly?
Yes, sir.
One of our attendees had a question regarding what is quote unquote key data. And it sounds like you can accept and include in your connector pretty much every data type. But you also work with your clients in trying to prioritize which data so there's not an overwhelming amount of data coming in. I'm assuming some of the pricing may be dependent on the amount of data you analyze. So is that part of what you do with your clients?
So first of all, Ron, you do have the ability to define what data that you want to extract out. So one of the first steps that we have in that configuration is to come back with every table and column in the schema and let you select what you want to pull over. So if there's tables that are not necessary right now, maybe never necessary, you don't need to pull those over, so you're not encumbering yourself with data that would be part of those tables. However, I'll also say in a modern data stack, oftentimes you're trying to get as much data over there, unsilo that data, get it into a cloud data warehouse on AWS, Azure, or GCP, so that then your analysts can figure out what's important. So that they have access to, they may not know right away what's important. So you might want to bring that data over, eventually stop that, not continue to bring it over, but to bring it over for a period of time. So that's all configurable in the UI. But Ron, the first thing you asked is how do we define key data? I think key data, as it relates to that first data point of 44% of businesses say that they don't have key data. What they mean is the most important data to them to run their business.
I guess a good thing with all these connectors and tools you have is you can sit down with your client. You can help them identify what the endpoint is, and then you can almost work backwards, and they could look at all the data and they probably say, well, I wish I could see this and I wish I could see that. And then you could go with anyone on this call or anyone listening to this saying, great, we'll find a way easily and seamlessly to get all these different sources together in one place to facilitate your analysis so you don't have to worry about what's going on with the data. You just have to focus on your business, what the data shows you, and then take appropriate actions. It's a little bit like when people go to the cloud. You don't have to worry about racking and stacking servers anymore. You have to worry about being a more strategic architect. And I think the analogy applies when you're talking about data analytics as well.
Great points, Ron. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. That was extract. Let's move on to load. So Fivetran helps you manage that load process as well. We talked about, you're accessing that data on the extraction. Well, before you load the data, what are we going to load the data to? We're going to load it into an analytics ready schema. Oh man, you mean I've got to have a DBA that creates the schema for us in Snowflake or Synapse or Redshift or Databricks? No, Fivetran takes care of that for you. Based on the source, we create a schema that is SQL ready, that's analytics ready, that we manage. So if something changes in that schema, let's say you drop a table in the extract process, we understand that. We can drop that from the data destination. If something changes along the way, we manage that process so that you don't have to. So we create that schema, we manage that schema for you. You don't have to manage it ever again. We have self-healing properties in that load process. So if something goes down in the source, let's say that the database goes down for maintenance for a period of time, or your data center goes offline for whatever reason. When it comes back on, Fivetran picks up where it's left off. We know where we left off so that we don't have to do a truncate and reload every time there's a disruption in the process. We cursor where we've left, we move on, we pick up the data, then we catch up. You're good to go. No need to do a reload unless you choose to do a reload. We, as part of this process, so we manage all of that load process. So if you choose to not have a historical view, you don't want to see every single change in the database, you just want to see each line, we can manage that. We manage the match and merge functionality. We take care of that load process for you. So again, you don't have to. All you need to worry about is configuration of that connectivity from the end of the destination, wherever that destination is. We take care of the rest of loading the data for you on time based on the timeliness that you select in that extract process.
Hey, Kelly, we had another question about, and I believe my New York accent will misrepresent the person asking the question, so I'll just summarize it. He wants to know where the data is loaded and can it be stored in the cloud?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. We support cloud destinations exclusively. It can be databases on the cloud like Oracle or SQL Server, Postgres on the cloud. We can support Azure, data warehouses, Blob. We now support S3. We support Synapse. If it's in the cloud, we have or will have support for it. All right, I'll move on. Let's talk transformations. So another thing that Sri talked about was having good quality data. And we agree, you want to have good quality data. You don't want that good quality data to impact your ability to analyze the data, which is the difference between an ELT process and an ETL process. In an ETL process, you're getting the data perfect before you load it. In an ELT process, you're loading the data so that your analysts have access to it and they can start doing the things that they need to do, and then you transform it. So they might be able to do some of the transformations with a SQL-like tool, or they might give better requirements to the data engineers so that they can write the transformations. We support transformation logic through DBT. Why do you say DBT? SQL is the #1 analyst tool in the world. More analysts use SQL than anything else. So we're supportive of meeting them where they are from a tool perspective and supporting DBT and their open source or cloud-based functionality in that SQL mechanism. Additionally, we can instigate those transformations based on the data that's being passed through. So when we see a data change, and based on a column, based on something that's in a transformation, we can then tell the transformation to run and run it on destination. Furthermore, we have transformations that come out of the box that are pre-built based on common data in applications so that you can either build from there or apply those transformations directly, further accelerating your capability to have not only access to data, but access to good quality data for your analysts as they're going through their analytics programs. The last part of this that is important for your innovative data organizations is governance. What's happening in the data as it's moving through the pipeline? Is that pipeline and its users adhering to our role-based access controls that are put into place and the data that they should have access to and that they should be able to move? For the data that they have access to, is our sensitive data being protected? All of these answers are yes when you talk to Fivetran. So we have an open API. So when you access source data, you move it into a destination, the light normalization that we do, the things that we're doing and putting it into a schema, we're exposing all of that as part of the open API so that you can get that information to Atlan, to Elation, to Calibra, to any of the common data governance tools. You can see that continuity of your data as it passes through the Fivetran platform. That's fantastic. PII is always a concern for organizations because this is very sensitive information about your customers, students, patients, the constituents who you're doing business with, your customers, your partners, and there's information that you may not want to have out there on the cloud for analytics, information that they don't need in order to do great analytics. We help you identify that data that should be protected, and then furthermore hash that data so that as it does move through, you can identify that, hey, there is data in this column, but it's been masked so that it protects the identity of the person, the constituent whose information that we want to protect. Furthermore, across the Fivetran platform, the data is encrypted as it's moving through the Fivetran platform, and we don't store anything in the Fivetran cloud. So once we are done writing to the destination, we tear down that cluster, we remove all the logs. Other than the cursors, we don't have any information about the data that we passed over. And then we also can interact with your role-based access control system and apply those same rules into Fivetran. Just a quick recap. So you might be thinking about Fivetran, like, well, this sounds familiar. From an ELT perspective, you might have an ETL tool in process today. You might have data engineers who are right now writing a framework so that they can interact with an API and get data from one of your applications and unsilo it and get it into your cloud data warehouse. Why Fivetran? What do we do that's better? The first thing is automation. We automate all of these components, whether it's the creation of the connector itself, either source or destination, so that you don't have to. That enables literally a 5-minute setup. When I say a 5-minute setup, test me on that. We can go through a demo offline, and I can walk you through what that looks like from a setting up that connection, going through the authentication, and moving data into your cloud destination. Scale. Because this is in the cloud, it can scale. You might have small jobs that are going to run need to run at the same speed as very large jobs. We can scale out because we're in the cloud. We have a Kubernetes cluster that scales up and scales down based on the amount of data that we're seeing so that we can run data very quickly, and we manage that process so that you don't have to. And then finally, very secure platform. We work on all three of the major clouds. We follow all of the common compliance requirements, and we have a centralized security process to make sure that nobody's getting access to your data that shouldn't get access to it. If you don't believe me, ask some of our customers. We've all heard of DocuSign. They moved to Fivetran for their marketing analytics program. They had about a dozen different applications that they needed to unsilo data to. We literally set it up in 20 minutes for them to start replicating all of that data into a new Snowflake instance. Autodesk had a great use case where they had in their built ETL processes, they had a lot of downtime, and their analytics users were screaming because they didn't have access to the data as they were expecting it via SLA. They moved to our cloud-based platform, and those problems have gone away, and it's actually enhanced their ability to get more data into the data warehouse because they have a trusted solution. And then Old Castle infrastructure. If you are sitting in a commercial building right now, or if you've driven down the road, You have probably interacted with some of the infrastructure that Oldcastle builds. They are a huge part of our infrastructure across America. They had a big program for a modern data stack. You might talk about $25 million ROI as something too big. We were a part of that $25 million ROI in moving things to the cloud and speeding up the process of delivering data for analytics. That's about Fivetran. We can skip over that. Let me pause there. Questions for anybody?